Well, my
want to do
tipping
this?
point was, I tell this story all the time. I always get chills. The first thing I self-published, I had a backlist novella, and I put it up. A friend of mine was like, "What do you have to lose? Put something up." And I didn't really think much of it because I was still really trying to go the traditional, route at that point. And about 3 weeks later, I thought I should go see if I sold any of these. And this was like early 2010, so the world had just started to change, but it was kind of early. And I logged in, and I had sold like 250 books, and I think I had made like $358. And that was when I knew. It was such a moment for me that I could put up a book myself and that people would go and type in Bella Andre into a search engine for a retailer and buy my books. I was like, oh my God, that changes everything. And in that moment, that was it. So my tipping point was 250 bucks and $300.
But a realization that this is a scalable business.
A realization, not that it was a scalable business, but that I didn't need anyone else to do it for me. And that was it. Yeah.
Pretty powerful.
It was. I mean, it was crazy. I was meeting some friends for lunch. One of them is Barbara Freethy that day. And I wrote down that number on like a little yellow piece of paper, and I was late to lunch. Then I show up, and Barbara and my other couple friends are talking, and I just interrupted the middle of their conversation and just slapped that paper down on the middle of the table. And I said, oh my God, you guys, look at what I made all by myself. And everybody was like, oh! It was a moment for everybody. Because we all suddenly were like, hold on a minute. This can be within our own control.
So since then, what have you learned about becoming a global business? Because you know, translations, audio, maybe you could talk about how you go just beyond the ebook.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I think it's great to experiment. I've done a lot of experimentation in the last 3 or 4 years, but what I'm sort of learning is that it can be great to go wide, and if you're the kind of person who wants to hire a staff and all of that sort of thing, super. And there's a lot that you can do. And I have friends who are doing that very effectively, and it's fabulous. For me, what I'm learning is that the return on investment for my happiness and my time and financially is every minute that I spend writing is the greatest return on investment for everything. Now, that's not to say that I still don't want to be in complete control of the entire publishing process, because I do. But everything that I do now, I do with an eye to, how much is this going to take me away from my writing? And, is this going to be something that's going to add stress to my life or not add stress? I really, really weigh that. But it's taken me 4 years to get there.
Yeah. And what do you see coming? So we really think that you're about 2 years ahead
Right.
of the UK authors. So what are you focusing on? What are you excited about for the next couple of years of the indie journey?
Global growth would be awesome, and hopefully it'll keep coming. I think it will. Apart from that, I'm famous for always saying that right now and at any point nobody can predict this. It moves too fast. It changes so quickly. There's so many people innovating and thinking of great stuff. There's so many writers that are just sort of going to come up and pop and change things a little bit in some way. Who knows? And I think that the great thing about doing self-publishing is that you're nimble, so that it doesn't matter that you don't know what's going to happen. You're not worrying about trying to predict anything, because what you know to be true is that when it changes, you can change with it.
And you mentioned your friends, Barbara, who we've just
Yeah.
interviewed. Is community really important
It's
amongst
super
indies?
important. Yeah, I think community. I often hear people say, writing is a really solitary thing, and I guess so. Obviously, I've never thought about it that way, because I guess I like those solitary hours. But we call it the brain trust. So for me, the brain trust is Barbara Freethy and Tina Folsom, who are both amazing, entrepreneurial, wise women authors who self-publish. And so the three of us, we run, covers by each other, we run book descriptions by each other, and there's that thing where you're always, because you really know that this person knows their stuff and they know your stuff. So there's just a trust, and And I think having that, knowing that you're not in this alone. Like we're each running our own companies, but you're not alone, I think is really, really important.
And for new authors starting out, how do you find those friends, that community?
You join writers groups. In the United States, it's Romance Writers of America. Here, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there's a lot of things. So you go to those things and just be open to meeting people. You can come to things like the London Book Fair, and I was at a conference in San Francisco, and I was in the audience listening to a panel actually talking about the London Book Fair. And one of my good friends now was just sitting right in front of me, and I asked a question to the panelists and didn't really care for their answer. She didn't care for their answer either, and she turned around to me and she was like, "Don't listen to them." And she and I, that was it. We started up this friendship, and I think as long as you're open to meeting other like great people, great writers, great thinkers, then you're going to form a community.
And then community with your readers. What are your sort of best ways to connect with your readers?
I answer all my fan mail. I reply to everything on Facebook, on Twitter, on Goodreads. Sometimes it takes me a little while, but they're there for me, and they are what has made this possible for me. And their love of the books, and they're the ones spreading the word. They're the ones saying, "Oh my God, you have to read the Sullivans. There's 12 of them, and right now, and you need to give up a whole week of your life to them." And, they're the ones saying that to everybody they know, and so I have such immense respect for them. And for me specifically, I am them. I read a book a day, even now. And people joke, they're like, "You write a book a day and you read a book a day," but reading for me is such a treat. It's like, if I write 3,000 words, I can read for a half hour. So I really use it as like the carrot. I love reading. So I'm the reader. And I know, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, a really great best-selling indie author. And we were both saying that when we've ever written to authors, be like, "Oh my God, we love your stuff," and you don't hear back, a part of you dies. So I don't want a part of anybody to die, and I love my readers so much. So I think that our relationship is probably strong because they sense that.
And tell us a bit more about the Sullivans, because in romance, these family sagas, are they sagas? Can I call them?
Yeah,
sagas?
you can call it a saga.
Yeah. Really popular. What is this? What do you think this trend is around family?
I think that's always been. I mean, it's a link between them. I think what's fun about it is that you get to know all these characters as in each book, and I'm fairly careful. Like, I know enough about the holes that you can write yourself into to not give too much away about future characters, because you'll write yourself into a hole and you're like, "Oh, why did I make him say that? Because now, But so, like, if you take my first Sullivan book, I really seed the story for the second Sullivan book. And even people who are like, "I don't like the first Sullivan book," are like, "But I have to read the second one because she made me so curious about the next brother." And then by the second and third book, I really started to bring in like the whole family. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, I can't wait for this story." And I want his story. And her story. And you see, it's like you've created... I think it's exactly the same as writers who create a paranormal world. I've done it in a contemporary way. My world is just a family.
So yesterday, you said, you and Hugh Howey, we don't do marketing, but everything we do is marketing.
I saw that on Twitter and I was like, everyone's what was she saying?
Yeah, so explain what you mean by that.
So I think people think about marketing in a traditional sense of, and I'm always like, I don't even totally know what it encompasses, but like maybe print ads, or you're buying things, or you're spending a lot of time on social media, or I'm like kind of like, I don't even sort of know what it would be. You're hiring a PR team to do like useless things, right? I don't know. I'm sort of at a loss. You're doing stuff. So people like me and Hugh Howey don't do that. I mean, we do spend time on social media because we like it and we love our fans and all that kind of stuff. But we're not on there like advertising and really like, oh, how do we pull them in with our new car ad or whatever. So we don't do marketing, but every single thing we do is marketing, because marketing begins with the cover. It begins with the title. It begins with the book description. It's the words that you use. It's the emotion that you pull from the reader from those things. When I create a cover, I am going 100% for emotion. When I create a title, I am going 100% for emotion. It's all an emotional response. So my marketing really begins and ends with my cover, my title, and my book description. And then you have to follow up with the marketing like with a great book. So you write a great book, and then after you do that, okay, maybe occasionally you'll run like a 24-hour sale on a book. You'll do something like BookBub or Pixel of Ink or something like that. But that's very much like sort of a once-in-a-while addendum. Your marketing begins with the very, very first presentation of it.